my life. So thank you so much for taking time to join us tonight. This webinar is kind of an experiment. It's the first big one we've done. It's the first time we've posted one on Frontline or My Learning Plan for people to sign up for and to join in with us this way. So we're trying it as an alternative to, an in-person session. And your feedback today will be really helpful as to whether or not you like this kind of format and find it valuable. And we'll see how it goes from there. So just to get some introductions out of the way, I am Erica Armstrong, and joining us tonight as well is Deanne Prinz. So you can see me on camera, and Deanne is the one you see in the chat room that shows up as Peel Assistive Technology. So we're both here tonight to kind of support you and guide you along with this introduction to Read and Write for Google Chrome. And yeah, we're assistive technology resource teachers. With Peel, obviously. Out of curiosity, is anyone tuning in tonight not from Peel? We kind of put it out on Twitter, so that's possible. We have other people joining us as well. And as I've been saying already, please do join in that chat box. I'm just one person. I just have one perspective. All of you have amazing expertise as well and can, contribute to this discussion. So paste some links in, ask questions, give ideas. Please, this is meant to be interactive and conversed amongst each other as we go. So before we dive into the how of Read and Write, I wanted to take a moment just to chat about why Read and Write. So maybe you can even participate in the chat room right now. Why did you sign up for this webinar? Why are you interested in Read and Write? I'm going to share a few things, but maybe you have a different perspective as well. So to start out with, we're all familiar now, or at least I hope we are, with the Empowering Modern Learners vision from Peel. And these are the 4 belief statements. So when we're thinking about students who need to use Read and Write, we're hoping to empower them. We're hoping to be flexible to their needs. We want them to be curious and competent and able to take that active role in their learning, even if they struggle with reading and writing. Because we all know in school, traditionally, if you struggle with reading and writing, you struggle with everything, because that's so foundational to everything we do in school. So this is such a powerful tool for those students. Way back in September, when Peter Joshua introduced the school year with Starting Point, he quoted this study, and I find it really interesting because it talks about how we can't just keep going the same way we always have. We have more diverse needs in our classrooms now than we ever used to. So shifting our mindsets is going to be really necessary to make sure everyone's included and everyone's served. And, sometimes that's going to mean really questioning some of those values that we've held to in the past. So these are just a couple of thoughts I had recently, and it ties into those mindsets we have to shift. A mindset that we come across quite often, be it from students themselves or the public or parents or other educators. Sometimes there's that perception that using a tool like Read and Write is cheating, or that students are being lazy when they're using technology. But just like I require to use my glasses because I have astigmatism, certain students require assistive technology. It's absolutely essential for them. I could take off my glasses and try to do this webinar right now, and you know what? I'd probably be okay. But I'd have a headache afterwards. I would struggle. It would not be as good. And no one's going to call me lazy for wanting to wear my glasses. And no one's going to say, oh, you can only wear your glasses for EQIO. Or let me call my ATRT to come in and train my student to use their glasses for EQIO. So I know some of us, that's where we're at with assistive technology right now, but we want to take steps towards using assistive technology all the time and being comfortable with it being a day-to-day part of our teaching. If you haven't seen this document, it came out last August from the Ontario Human Rights Commission, and I highly recommend taking the time to read it. It's kind of a wake-up call in some ways. And one of the things they say is that achieving integration and full participation requires barrier-free and inclusive design, as well as removing existing barriers. So to me, this picture here, we've seen this picture before, and what they're talking about kind of looks like this third picture on the right. Redesigning the fence, redesigning our classrooms, redesigning the homework we give, the assignments we give, to make sure that everyone can be successful at what we're doing. And they then go on to say that it's only when it's really impossible to do that we should look towards doing accommodations. So first, we should look at how we're designing things and try to make it so that everyone can be successful with where they're at. And only if that's impossible should we look at doing this second picture of giving accommodations to those that need it. So certainly both are going to be needed at any given time, but we should really strive for this. And they're not going to leave us hanging. They do give a suggestion as to how we can actually accomplish that, and it's through universal design for learning. Now, I'm not going to dive into this too much because universal design for learning could be a whole day-long session in and of itself, but it's about taking that step back and designing things from the start so that everyone can be successful. And this is just a really brief snapshot of how that can look. It's about multiple means of representation, multiple means of expression, and multiple means of engagement. And it sounds daunting at first, but it is possible. It can be done. And you have support with this. If this is something you're interested in diving into and you're not sure where to get started, then talk to your assistive technology resource teacher, talk to your modern learning resource teacher. We're here to support you on this journey, and we know it can be kind of this big mind shift. It requires different thinking, and that can be challenging, and by all means, we're here to help. I know some of you in the live stream right now are from contained classrooms, or maybe you support a student who is achieving expectations on an alternate curriculum. So you may have seen this document already, and it may be brand new to you. You might not have seen it before, but we can also start thinking about how Read and Write can help those students who need to work on personal health and well-being, self-determination, communication, social skills, functional academics. And these might be students with developmental disabilities or some other needs beyond the Ontario curriculum. So Read and Write can support with that as well. Okay, my goodness, this is a whole lot of me talking. Thank you for jumping in on the chat. I see it going by and I can't keep up with it, but I know Deanne's there to chat with you, so I'll let her keep up with that. All right, so we're going to dive into using Read and Write, and I'm going to do a demonstration. We have kindergarten teachers and we have high school teachers here, so don't pay attention to the content of what I'm showing you. Just pay attention to the strategies, because the content's kind of irrelevant. You can use Read and Write with, kindergarten level content or high school level content. That bit's all the same. So Read and Write for Google Chrome is a Chrome extension. And what that means is it takes the Chrome web browser and it kind of gives it a superpower, gives it a little extra functionality. So first things first, you have to be using Google Chrome. Now, if you're on a Peel desktop computer, our kind of habit is to open Internet Explorer. It's not going to work there. It doesn't show up there. So do make sure you take the time to open Chrome. And if you get in the habit of doing that, it'll become second nature in no time. If you're on a Chromebook, that's super easy, because on Chromebooks, you don't have the option. That's just what it is. And the second thing that's tricky is making sure you're actually signed in to Google Chrome. So on my screen here, it might be hard to see because it's really tiny, but up in the very upper right-hand corner of my Google Chrome web browser, you can kind of see my face. It's a little picture of me. And it says it's syncing to my P number. If you don't see that right there, or when you click on that, it doesn't say it's syncing to your account, then you will see an option right here to sign in. And you would sign in with your P number at pdsb.net and your typical Peel password. For students, it would be their student number at pdsb.net and their regular password. And then one thing to know is as you're doing that, you may get some prompts that ask some questions, and one of them is really important because people tend to ignore it and just close it. But when you're prompted to link data, you do have to choose to link data. I see Jasmine asking if the slides will be available after this webinar. Absolutely. Underneath the video right now in the video description, if you expand it, there are links to some resources there already. I haven't yet put the link to this particular slide deck, but I will add that after the fact. Not a problem. Yeah, and you're right. The recording of this whole session will be available right after, as soon as it's over as well, so you can come back to this and replay it later. Okay, so the read and write puzzle piece appears up here. So you'll see like the web address right here of wherever I'm at, and then I've got all these little icons because I've installed a whole bunch of Chrome extensions. So the one we're talking about tonight is the purple puzzle piece. And in Peel, if you're logged into your Peel account, this is available to all students and all staff. And it's put there automatically. You don't have to install it or do anything special. You just have to make sure you're signed in, and it should just automatically be there. So I'm going to go and demonstrate a little bit of it now for you. Hopefully it works. This is the part of the session where I cross my fingers and hope nothing goes wrong. So the toolbar works really well with websites and with Google Docs. So for example, I'm here on the Canadian Encyclopedia website, and I've found this article I'd like to read, but maybe I need a little help with reading it. So what I need to do is come up to my purple puzzle piece at the top, and I click on it, and you'll notice this toolbar appears. There's a little arrow thing at the very far left of it that I can click on and kind of drag that toolbar anywhere I like. So wherever it's convenient for me, and I can move it out of the way if I need to. Now to help with reading, I have two main options on websites. I have this one here, which is hover speech. I find this one really useful when you're navigating and you're kind of jumping around to different parts of a website. So I'm going to turn it on, and then I'm going to stop talking so you can hear hopefully what it's saying. But you'll notice everywhere I point my mouse, I just wait a second, and then it's automatically going to start reading that to me. So I'm going to turn it on.
Educators. Toggler icon. Timelines. Marie Joseph Angelique. Chloe Cooley. Black female freedom fighters. Date published. February 7th. A staunch feminist and a socialist in Canada.
Okay, so you get the idea. If you are kind of jumping all over a page and reading a little bit here and a little bit there, it's a great tool because you just have to point your mouse and wait, and it starts reading. Now, if you do finally settle on an article and you want to read something very in a linear fashion, it can get annoying because you're accidentally starting to read parts you didn't mean to. So for that, what I like to do is you just kind of highlight with your mouse and select the beginning of what you'd like to read. And then you come up to this little triangle. It's the play button.
A staunch feminist and a socialist in Canada's first black female member of a provincial legislature, Rosemary Brown battled for equality and human rights.
Okay, so you get the idea. And it would keep reading until I hit either pause or stop. So pause would obviously just kind of pause where it's at, and then I could unpause and keep going. I hit stop, so everything stops. Now, you have a lot of customization options as far as the voices and the speed and whatnot. At the very end of the toolbar, there are three little dots. And when you go to the three dots, you can go to Options. And you have a lot of choices for voices. And actually, if you've ever tried Read and Write before, there are tons of brand new voices they just released last week. The default voice is US Ava, and I've actually switched mine to Google US English because I find her to sound like fairly natural as far as, computer voice goes. She's not perfect, but she's pretty good. And you can also make her talk faster or slower depending on what you need. And I'm going to make mine speed up a bit. And you can choose to have continuous reading on or off. Continuous reading means that it's going to keep going until you hit stop. If you uncheck that, then it's just going to read a little bit at a time and you have to make it keep going. So it depends on what you prefer. Both are great. I know there's a few French teachers that signed up for this session. So if you happen to be a French teacher, one thing you can do is you can come into here and you can pick a French voice so that when it's reading aloud French text, it actually sounds like the proper accent. If you did want to use all the other features in French, one other thing you would have to do is come over to language, and you would change this from English to French as well. So that's that. So reading, pausing, playing back, that's all pretty straightforward, and it's really easy for the kids to catch on. Now, let's say I'm reading this text and I come across a word that's more challenging for me and I need some extra support with it. I have a few options. So I've just clicked on the little icon that looks like a book, and up pops the dictionary tool. At the same time, I'm going to click the very next icon. This is the picture dictionary. It's the one that looks like a little mountain and sun and whatnot. And so these tools are now open and I can put them wherever I want. And now all I have to do is highlight a word. And it's going to look up that word in the dictionary, and it's going to give me a definition. And there's a little triangle right next to each definition. If I hit it, it will read it.
Noun, a supporter of feminism.
And in this case, it didn't find a picture for feminism, which, that happens. But if I try another word, you'll see it automatically updates, and now I do have pictures for this word. So that's a great tool, and I can just kind of leave it there, and as I go through and read, it's there to support me when I need it, which is awesome. Now, one thing you can do as well, we're starting to get a bit more advanced here, but let's say this was part of a unit of study, and I wanted to keep those vocabulary words for later. So one thing I can do is highlight words, and then you'll notice on the Read and Write toolbar there are these 4 colored highlighters. It doesn't really matter what color you're doing, but I'm going through and highlighting individual vocabulary words, just one word at a time. And I'm going to be careful not to get the comma. You would keep going and do that with whatever vocabulary words you like. And then when you're ready, this is where the magic happens. Get ready to ooh and ah. I want to hear you all the way from your house to mine. You'll notice this little thing right here that looks like a bulleted list. And it says vocabulary if you hover on it. So I'm going to click on that. And this thing is going to come up saying a new document containing your vocabulary list is being created. And then I give it a minute. And I haven't done anything here. I've just waited. And it's automatically popped open a new Google document that has the words I selected down the left, their meanings in the second column, and if possible, the symbols right here. It's also made me a 4th column for notes, but I could, change that to whatever I wanted and do whatever I wanted with that. So that is magical. It does call it Vocabulary List Untitled, so you'll want to come up there and give it a more recognizable title so you can find it again later. But amazing, right? Even as a teacher, if you wanted to pre-teach some vocabulary for a unit of study, like what a great tool for us to save us some time as well. Now, as far as the meanings goes, it doesn't understand the context, so it's going to give you every definition of that word. But this is a Google document, so, if you don't need all the extra definitions, you just come in and delete the ones you don't need, and then you're good to go. So that is magical, and I love that. I'm just going to close that Google document and go back to my article. So that's great for vocabulary. So you'll notice I just got rid of the highlights by using this little sweeper clear highlights tool. And the next thing I'm going to demonstrate is, let's say you're doing some research or some jot notes, or you're looking for the main idea in this article, for example. You could assign as a teacher, let's say, okay, students, I'd like you to highlight the main idea in yellow. I'd like you to highlight some supporting details in blue. And I'd like you to highlight anything you don't understand in pink. and I just made all of that up. It could be anything. But the students would go along and they'd read, and I'm not actually reading this right now, so don't blame me if I'm not actually highlighting things that are the main ideas, but just to demonstrate. You go along and you do all your highlighting. Then, when you're ready, you would come to this circular, colorful wheel-looking thing. This is the Collect Highlights tool. It works very similar to the vocabulary tool. That's why I'm showing them back to back. But it gives you some options. You can sort them by position or color. So sorting by color means it's going to group all the yellow highlights together, all the blue ones together, etc. If you like position, it's going to keep it in the order it was found in the original text. And then I'm going to say OK. And then same idea. I'm not touching anything. I'm not doing anything right now. It's just automatically doing it for me. And it has pulled out exactly what I highlighted. Can't talk. And my favorite part is it's giving me a link back to my source. So, tomorrow when I come back to this and I want to go dive and look for more, I can get back to it. Or, if this is going to be part of a project and I need to cite my sources, that's going to help me out. So that's great as well. Again, it's going to be highlights untitled. So I always teach my students to come up here and give it a better name. And they might even want to put the document into a different folder to keep themselves organized or whatnot. So that is magical. Now, of course, this is just copied and pasted. It's not in the student's own words. So maybe at this point, they want to come down here and start writing, but using their own thoughts, their own ideas. There are a few tools we can use as far as helping us with writing. Two main options. The first one is this second icon up here. It looks like a crystal ball, like you're predicting the future. So when I click on that, it's going to turn on word prediction. It's kind of like when you're texting and your phone start making predictions of different words. Same idea. So as I start to type, it's going to start, predicting what I'm trying to type. And then one thing too that's cool is if you have a hard time reading and you're not sure which of those is the right option, you can just rest your mouse on each of them.
Today, Todd.
And it's going to read them out loud to help
Today.
you, pick the correct word. Another thing you can do to kind of give you even more support is you can turn on the picture dictionary at the same time. So
There.
As you hover,
It is. We can are not going to be.
okay, so the next word I want is the word write, and it's not showing up in the list. It didn't predict it, so I just have to start by typing W.
Work.
And I think I see it there.
Right.
There we go.
Down. A book. Letter. From.
Okay, so you get the idea. I'm going to turn off my word predictor. Make this bigger so you can see it. So that's, a great combination of tools together to be really supportive with writing and word prediction. And that's, pretty low key. Students aren't going to stand out with using those tools. They're just there if they need them. Another option to help with writing is talk and type. So it looks like a headset with a microphone, and it's kind of right here in the middle. Now, I don't know how it's going to work for me tonight because I'm using the microphone for this, how this is going to work. We're going to try it and see. Today I went to the store, period. New paragraph. I like chocolate, period. New paragraph. Do you like this tool? Question mark. Okay, so it did work for me, which is awesome. So as you can see, you kind of have to get used to speaking in a slightly different fashion for this to work really well for you. You have to dictate your punctuation. So, I need to say period at the end of my sentence. I need to say new line or new paragraph when appropriate. I need to say question mark if I need a question mark. So it doesn't take all the work out of writing. Kids still need to know the mechanics of it. But it does help, and it makes it a lot faster, especially if you're a really slow typer. Hello for writing report cards. This is magical. If you're the type of person that doesn't type fast, use this yourself. It's awesome for that. One thing I want to point out is it's really not super obvious, so I don't know if you can see it, but there's a gray dotted line that appeared underneath right here. And when I right click on it, it gives me some options. So it was correct. I did say this tool, but I might have meant the stool because they sound very similar to each other. So it's giving me some alternative options that I could click on just in case it didn't hear me correctly. So for some students that don't speak and don't enunciate super clearly, I tell them to finish their whole sentence right up to the punctuation because it's really smart. It's going to use the context of the other words that the student said to try to pick the correct words to write down, and then they can right click and fix their work this way, rather than getting kind of frustrated that it's not hearing them properly and giving up before they're done. So say your whole sentence, see if you can just fix it rather than starting all over if it didn't hear you correctly. So that's awesome as well. Now, you'll notice I paused my microphone, but it still appears right here. Right now, it's set to US English. If the student was talking in a different language, you can click right here and you can find whatever other language the student needs. So there's Français if they're speaking in French. Or maybe they're speaking in another language, the language they speak at home. There's all kinds of languages in here, which is awesome. For getting those ideas out for those newcomers or for students who might be English language learners. That's magical. It lets them at least express something. And then we can always use Google Translate afterwards to, get it back into English to kind of see their thinking and their ideas. So that is awesome. Now I'm going to write another sentence and make a few mistakes on purpose. Because I want to point out a new tool, which is called Check It. It's this check mark looking thing at the very beginning of the toolbar. So I'm going to click on it, and it's gone through my document, and you'll notice there are things now that are underlined in purple. This is just like a spell checker and a grammar checker that we might be used to from Microsoft Word, but it's going to help me. Oh, it didn't really make a good suggestion in this case. So, not a great example, but that's the idea. It would try to pick up on spelling mistakes. Let's see if it will get it. There, now it got it. Well, it is a brand new tool. Maybe it'll get better as it goes on, but that's the idea. At least it's there as something, a little bit of help for us. There's a question from Danielle, and she's asking, how do you use speech to text with a student who is seeing a speech pathologist for mispronunciation, like a lisp? Will it generally pick up the correct sentences? Not always, Danielle. So if a student tries it out and it's finding it's not working well, there's a couple things you can do to improve the chances of success. One is to make sure you're doing it in a quiet location, which I know is hard in a busy classroom to find a quiet location. So that may or may not be realistic. But the more competing noises there are around, the harder it is going to have zoning in on what the student's saying. And the next thing as well is using a headset with a microphone is going to work better than just using the built-in microphone. Again, that headset with a microphone, it has noise cancellation capabilities, so it's going to better ignore any competing noises. So it might be more accurate. That said, even with a quiet location and a headset with a microphone, for some students, speech to text is not going to be the right choice. So that student may want to stick more to prediction, or there is another option. Just if your main goal is just to hear that student's thoughts and it's not a big deal to see their mechanics of their writing, one thing you can do is called a voice note. So it works like a comment on a Google document. So you kind of have to highlight what you're answering. So I'm going to highlight the question, do you like this tool? And then I'm going to come up here to my toolbar, and the second last option is voice note. When I click on that, it kind of switches a little bit. I now get this microphone with a 1-minute timer. So you do have a 1-minute time limit, but you could add as many 1-minute clips as you needed if 1 minute wasn't long enough. But essentially you start recording, and then it's going to record whatever I'm saying. It's going to record an audio file. So it doesn't matter if I, speak perfectly clearly or not. I could then play it back to hear it again and see if it's what I want. I could re-record it if it wasn't great. And then when I'm ready, I hit insert. And you do have to be patient because it's, saving that file, uploading that file and whatnot. It's not instant. It takes a moment. All right, there it goes. And you'll see it now shows up over here on the right as if it were a comment. And when I put my mouse over it, I now see a little play button. And then I can just... And then it's going to record whatever I'm saying. Right? And then I can hear exactly what that student was saying. So, if you can make sense of what the student is saying, even with their speech impediment or their lisp or whatever it is, this might be better. Jasmine says that I don't see the check it tool in my toolbar. Is this a new addition? Yes, it is new. And it's a brand new feature. So it might not show up for everyone just quite yet, but they are rolling it out and it should come along. They have suggested to us, like if you're on a personal account or whatnot, if you uninstall Read&Write and then reinstall Read&Write, that might kind of trigger it to show up a little faster for you. On our Peel accounts, we can't really do that because it's controlled centrally, but it should now be showing up on all Peel accounts. Okay, good. I'm glad that works, Daniel. Awesome. Shelly asks, could you use a voice note for feedback if the doc is shared to us? Absolutely. Yeah, it's great for feedback. So if you're using Google Classroom and you're giving students assignments via a Google Doc, they're handing those Google Docs back to you. You could sit there and type out comments, but the students might be more likely to pay attention to it if you give them your feedback in a voice note. And how much more personal is that for you to say, hey, great job, awesome writing, I love it. And for them to actually hear like the pride in your voice, then that's a powerful thing to do for sure. Awesome. Okay. We've covered a lot of tools already, which is great. A couple more I will point out. So we have right here next to Talk and Type, there's a translator. Now, this translator doesn't translate entire texts or even sentences. It just translates individual words. So right now I've clicked on store and I have mine set to translate from English to French. So it's now showing me French words for store. One thing I like about this is I can now click the little triangle right next to the word.
Magasin.
And it's going to say it with a decent French accent, actually. So it's great for students in French class or French immersion. But you could, again, going to the 3 dots at the end of your toolbar into options, right here is your translation options. And you could, have the students set it to whatever language they're most comfortable with. So when they're reading an English text, they can select a single word and see the translation in the language of their choice. So that can help with their comprehension as well. So that's awesome. Another one I will point out to you is to the other side of our talk and type, we have an option called Screen Mask. Now this one's great for students that have trouble focusing. So when I activate it, you'll see it gets a little purple underline underneath of it, so you know it's on. But as I slowly move my mouse, you'll see it just kind of focuses my attention and kind of helps me follow along as I'm reading. I don't know if you've ever seen students that put like a ruler under a book and they kind of slide it down as they read. Same type of idea. You do get some options right here as well. So I can change, my background color and my reading light color. And I can change, how opaque or how translucent everything is. Completely customizable. This can be great with certain types of dyslexia and whatnot. Certain combinations of colors might work better for certain students. And then to turn it off, you just have to get all the way back up to the top and click on it again, and it will disappear. So not one that's commonly needed, but it's definitely there as an option. Working backwards again, the next one is web search. It's not really magical at all, but all it does is highlight a term, hit web search, and it literally just saves you typing in that Google search. So that's all that one does. That one may or may not appear on your toolbar. Sometimes it's turned off by default. So that brings me to another good point. In, again, the 3 dots and the options. If you go over to features, you're able to toggle on or off any of these tools. So if you're using this with a young student or a student who is overwhelmed by the amount of buttons that shows up on this toolbar, you want to just make it super simple, just what they need. You can come along, and turn off whatever you don't need. And I don't know if you can kind of see in the background, but it's literally getting rid of all those tools. Another thing you can do on this screen is if you don't like the order that the tools are showing up, you want the ones you use most frequently to kind of be first, you can just click and drag them and rearrange all your tools. And the great thing about Google as well is once you've set it up on one computer, when you then go log into a different computer, it syncs all your settings. So you don't have to keep doing this over and over and over. So that is awesome. Just while we're in the options, I'll just point out one thing I didn't show you with the word prediction earlier is you can change some of the options for word prediction. You can decrease the number of results that show up. You can choose whether it follows your cursor while you type or whether you just kind of put it off to the side, and you can make the text bigger or smaller. There's a few options in there. Awesome. Okay, just a few more tools I haven't pointed out to you yet. And as I'm getting towards, the end of my demonstration here, I'm now starting to point out things that aren't needed as often. At the beginning, I showed you the things you're going to use all the time. These things are more obscure, but just good examples. Okay, I'm going to go to a new tab. And I'm going to find a map of Canada. Not there, I'm not. Okay, I'll just do it from right here. Now, text to us always looks like text, but on the internet, text isn't always text. Text is sometimes actually a picture. And so that's why I wanted to find a map, and specifically an image of a map, because that's a quite common scenario. We can see all these labels, Ontario, Quebec. They look like words to us, but to the computer, they can't pick out those words. So if you were to try to use your read and write toolbar on this, it wouldn't work with the regular reading tools. So I couldn't just hit play. It wouldn't find anything to play. But there is a workaround to that, and that is this tool that looks like a dotted outline of a square with a cursor in it. It's the Screenshot Reader. So you click on it once to activate it, and then your cursor will change to a set of crosshairs. Now with this crosshairs, you have to click and drag a box around the text that we would like to be read out loud. So I'm just going to click and drag around the word Ontario, and then I just let go. And I don't need to do anything after I let go but wait.
Ontario.
Yeah, and it didn't really read it that well. That's the thing with this tool. It's not perfect. We'll try again. But it is at least an option when... That one wasn't too bad. It's an option where no other option exists, at least. Now, if I were to try to get it to read these words down here that are kind of overlapping, it wouldn't really work at all. It works best with a clear, contrasting background. So we want to avoid using that where we can, but at least it's there as an option. Okay. This tool right here next to it is called Audio Maker. It would let you save an audio file of a document or a text. It downloads it as an MP3 file that you could then, put on your phone or whatnot. I've heard students use this if they're memorizing a presentation or a speech. They'll write out their presentation or speech, use Audio Maker, put it on their phone, listen to it as they're on the bus coming and going from school. Or maybe they've written some study notes of some things they're trying to memorize, and they can use Audio Maker to make an audio file to listen to over and over. Again, probably not something you'll need to use a lot, but it's there if you need it. So it's super simple. I'm just going to highlight my text, hit Audio Maker, and then it starts downloading. And you probably can't see it because it's cut off, but it's saved to my downloads folder on my computer. All right, so that's that. And then the very last tool that I haven't shown you yet, oh no, there's two more. The second last icon is Simplified Page. So on this page here, you've got all the menus on top, menus down the side, there's other buttons along here. For some students, that might be distracting. So when you hit Simplified Page, it reloads that same text, but gets rid of all the distractors. Now you'll notice it's not perfect. Anytime there's like an apostrophe or an accent on somebody's name, for some reason, it makes a mess of it. So it's not a perfect tool, but at least there it's less distracting. Again, for students that read better with different contrasts, you can come up here and change it to give you some other options. Just makes reading a little bit easier on the eyes for some students. And the very last thing I will show you is a tool that you may not use very often, but maybe for the primary teachers. It is this practice reading aloud option. So when I hit it, it loaded the same text from the page, but now it lets students hit record, and then they would read this text out loud to practice. Then they could play it back to hear themselves. They could re-record it if they like. And when they're happy with it, they can hit this paper airplane and send the recording to their teacher. Now, as the teacher, you would get an email that would say, Erica, your student has sent you a recording, and you would have 7 days in which to listen to that recording. You can pay for an upgraded version to keep things for longer, but I wouldn't worry about that. 7 days should be plenty of time just to, hear a practice recording. But, there might be uses in that for running records or for other things. You could get creative with that and find ways to make it even more useful for you. So that is all the tools on the toolbar. Pretty amazing. All right, I'm going to find my slides here again. Okay, so next steps. What's next? So I've showed you a ton of stuff tonight. It's probably information overload. Might be overwhelming. There's a lot to it. Again, don't feel like you have to use everything. start with, play, pause, and stop. Start with word prediction. Those are the things you're going to get your most bang for the buck. And, many students are going to find that useful. But when you're ready for a bit more, do check out the links in the video description. There are a few files there I've shared with you that you could then use to share with your colleagues or even share with your students. Feel free to use them however you like. There's a file for learning how to use Read and Write in English, one for French. And then there's a file as well for finding accessible materials, because that's then kind of the trick. Read and Write is wonderful, but then you have to have the stuff that works with it. One tool I want to point out is called Arrow. Arrow is provided by the Ministry of Education, and it's alternativeresources.ca. And it looks like this when you get there, a government website. But it provides digital copies of texts you would typically use in school. So it's got all your Nelson literacy. It's got all your Math Makes Sense. It's got all the Forester reading books from this year. If there's something you're using in your class that they don't have, you can mail them a physical copy and they'll scan it all for you. So it's a great service. A lot of people don't realize it exists and they spend a lot of time trying to scan things themselves. Don't do it. It's already done for you. You would just come here and you would have to go to advisor registration and you would sign up for an account. Now you can't just, go shopping here. You have to respect the copyright laws. So you can only get digital copies of things that your school actually owns. And you can only use this with students with perceptual disabilities. So some kind of learning disability, or maybe they're blind or low vision. You can't just use it with everybody, unfortunately, as nice as that would be. But that's there as an option. Another next step, if you're not familiar yet with Google Classroom, for sure get used to using that, because that's a great way to take your digital materials, hand them out to your students, and collect them back. And your ATRTs would love to help you with that. HyperDocs, if you've never heard of, there's a great community of educators on Twitter, on the internet. If you search for HyperDocs on Twitter, you're going to find tons of stuff already made, already digital, amazing activities that you can just tweak and use with your students. So definitely, just Google that term. You're going to find a treasure trove. The G Suite training tool. So whenever you're on any G Suite tool, you're going to see this circle with a question mark in it. And when you click on it, you're going to get G Suite training. Yes, it's installed and ready, I know. Okay, I'm going to open something besides my presentation. So there you go. So I'm in Docs, so it's showing me, getting started with Docs, creating and working with Docs. So anything you want to know, how do I print a document? How do I file it in a folder? How do I email it? It's all right there, and you just hit play, and it's a quick look. It's 1 minute and 16 seconds, straight to the point, which is awesome. If you're a keener and if you're a geek like me, you might want to look into your Google for Education certifications. So if you just go to the Google for Education website, just search for Google for Education, Educator Level 1 or Educator Level 2, you'll find this website. And you can take the tests if you like to get officially certified. But even if you have no interest in taking the exams, you can go here to training. And, first day of Google Classroom. How do I get started with Google Classroom? It's right here. All kinds of stuff to learn and to dive into when you have the time. With all of our spare time, right? Maybe if we have a snow day tomorrow, that's what you can do. Wishful thinking. And last but not least, do reach out to us as assistive technology resource teachers. We love to help. We're here for you. If you don't know who yours is, in either of the files I linked below, either the English or the French one, there is a slide that shows you all of the names of all of the assistive technology resource teachers, so you can find yours. Or, I sent you guys out an email this afternoon. Feel free to respond to me there and I can help you find out who yours is. That is not a problem. Great. So we have about 10 minutes left if there's any final questions. Otherwise, I do thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was kind of a fun experiment to try a webinar, and from my end, I went fairly well, and I hope you thought it went very well as well. But definitely, send me an email and let me know. And we are planning on some more webinars coming up. They'll be posted on my learning plan shortly, or right here on this YouTube channel. You might have seen kind of the schedule for the other webinars, and feel free to come back for those. All right, so any burning questions before we go for the evening? Or Deanne, is there anything I forgot? Because that's highly likely as well. You're welcome, everybody. I'm seeing all your thank yous. That's great. Appreciate that. Such an easy format. I didn't have to drive anywhere. Is there going to be a snow day tomorrow? If it was my decision, I would say yes. But I don't know. What do you guys predict? Will there be? Will there won't be? Who knows? Oh, yes. Deanne brings up a good point. So talk and type on our Read and Write toolbar doesn't work everywhere, unfortunately. So for example, if I'm in Gmail and I'm composing an email, which is a great functional literacy skill, talk and type doesn't work for some reason. But there is a really short video here on the same YouTube channel. It's the video right previous to this one, where I demonstrate how to activate on a Chromebook the built-in dictation feature on a Chromebook. And that works everywhere, even places where Read and Write doesn't work. So for your students that have SIA Chromebooks, definitely have a look for that video because it's a great alternative and it kind of opens up even more options. You'd like to know more about the Google certification. It's a self-paced learning thing. You go through the lessons and you get familiar with using all the different Google tools. And then when you feel you're ready, you can pay a small amount of money. It's $10 for the first one. And you take an exam. So they give you a fake Google account that you log into, and you do it from the comfort of your own home. And you have 3 hours where you have to sit down in front of a computer with a webcam, and they're taking pictures of you to make sure you're not cheating, make sure you're not like calling in a ringer. But essentially, it asks you some questions, and then it gives you some scenarios, and it asks you to use all the different Google tools, and it's kind of testing, do you really know your stuff? And then it marks you instantly. You find out right away if you passed, and then if you happen to pass, you get a little badge that you can add to your resume, add to your blog, add it to your Twitter. You just get a little bit of bragging rights, but it's great when you're applying for jobs. It's a great point on your resume. And it's a really great learning opportunity. Forget the certification and the bragging rights. Like, you really do learn a lot just by going through it all. Yeah, it would help you a lot getting to know about all these things. The only thing about the certification thing is it takes a lot of, it's a lot of self-paced learning. So if that's your style, if you're great with teaching yourself things, there's tons of resources out there. If you're not so keen on learning things yourself, you prefer more in-person learning, look for EdTech Team. They do a lot of what they call boot camps, and they're in-person workshops where they go through all the skills you would need to pass those exams. So that's a great option as well if you prefer that face-to-face, in-person kind of help in learning. Of course, it costs money if you're going to do it that way versus doing it yourself. You can get all the resources for free. So just two different options for the same thing. Shelly says her daughter was listening. Hello, Shelly's daughter. You're welcome. Yeah, these are great tools for anybody. I wish I had this in university. You know how much time this would have saved me? But all right. Any last questions? The time for exploration and to make mistakes. Absolutely. You're right about that. The more you use it, the easier it gets. Point it out to your students. They might not even know it exists. But just even showing it to them and demonstrating a couple of the tools or like challenging them to explore it and figuring it out on their own. For sure. Awesome. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'm going to wrap things up for the evening. Thank you so much for joining us. The recording of this will show up right here on this channel. It takes, a half an hour or so to kind of process, and then it just automatically shows up. So feel free to share that with your colleagues, or, I went fast, so you might want to come back to it and kind of pause and play and go through it again. But I will see you next Thursday if you're going to come back for the next webinar. We will be doing iPad accessibility features next time around. So how to take the same kind of stuff, but do it on an iPad with the built-in tools that iOS has. So I will see you next time if you join us. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good night. Bye.